All right. American HODL, welcome back to Bitcoin for Millennials.
Bram, it's good to be here. I think last time I was here, I pissed off some boomers, but that's just the way it goes. That's just the way it goes. What can I say?
Well, shout out to the boomers because they do watch Bitcoin for Millennials. Actually, it's more Gen X that says, we are always forgotten. Everyone forgets about us.
Who? Who?
Yeah, I don't know. Gen X.
Who's that? I never heard of them.
Years ago, we would have fantasized about 100K, hitting 100K, right? Mm-hmm. And then when we hit 100K, there was basically deafening silence.
I'm always much more of the I'm ungrateful. I'm always like, why not 250K? What's 125? Like, why not 250? Why not 1 million? Why shouldn't we be at 5 million by now? Like, that's how my brain thinks.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, do you feel a little tingle yet? But maybe that's the answer.
I would say. Well, this has been a very weird bull market. I hesitate to even call it a bull market because Bitcoin is down 12% against gold this year. So year to date, Bitcoin is only up 37% or something as of the time of this recording. And yet we're not used to bull markets looking like that in Bitcoin. Usually bull markets in Bitcoin are very, it's a wild ride and like there's a lot of volatility. And this has just been very different than anything we're used to in the past. There's basically like no new retail involvement. It's an institutional game now. It's a nation. It's starting to become a nation state level game. But like things are happening very slowly, methodically, in a controlled fashion. And I'm not sure how long that lasts for, but it's very unusual to me to, like, for instance, usually when we break through an all-time high in Bitcoin, you see the price just begin to skyrocket, and just take off for the stratosphere. That has not happened this time around. Like this time around, we kind of like break an all-time high and then we retrace. And then we like inch above the all-time high and then we retrace. And then we inch above the all-time high and then we retrace. And that's been very odd. I'm just not used to seeing that. And it's kind of like we used to say gradually then suddenly. And it kind of feels like it's more suddenly than gradually. Like it used to be more sudden than it is now. Right now it's very gradual. And I'm not even like, it just doesn't feel like a Bitcoin bull market that I'm used to in any meaningful sense.
Yeah. Well, I think just that idea is also interesting, right? I mean, we had 3 cycles. Is that a pattern or not, right? Or perhaps that is just how the early monetization of an asset goes, that it actually follows, these psychological cycles, this graph, right? Where, where we go into disbelief and then people dump and whatever. Perhaps that is what is the beginning of something like this. But I think eventually, I actually just had a conversation with Roxham where we talked about, this is day 6 of a US government shutdown and everything is all-time high, right? So that should be like the most scary signal financially, economically that you can get. And people are like, man, let's go, strap on the rocket and we're going to go. And I think that the fact that Bitcoin, perhaps it's lagging with gold, right? But the fact that Bitcoin is up there with gold and silver, I always find very interesting, right? Because when we were younger, we learned about, okay, if you want to keep stuff of value, it's gold and silver. But that narrative is slowly changing, right? Like everyone younger than us knows Bitcoin, silver, or gold, silver, and Bitcoin.
It's always funny when there's a government shutdown because, I'm in America, nothing changes. It's the exact same. Like there is no disruption to my life. It just kind of proves that the government is completely meaningless. It does nothing for anyone. And it is just a parasite that sticks a gun to my head every year and forces me to give it money, or otherwise it kills me in front of my family. So I think the government shutdown is hilarious, personally. It never strikes fear into my heart or anything. I think that, it's just been a very interesting, we're trading like something like an NVIDIA or like a tech stock. Like we're trading very differently than we have previously. And gold is starting to catch a bid in a way that it hasn't in many years. JP Morgan put out a statement, a report recently saying that Bitcoin and gold were the debasement trade and that they expected Bitcoin to continue going up and gold to continue going up as well. And that's true. I mean, I think we've thought about, Bitcoiners have talked about the demonetization of gold for some time. And I do think if you look at Bitcoin's history, that gold is slowly being demonetized into Bitcoin. But in the here and now, especially because we have all these generations who, you know, are kind of tech illiterate Luddites who don't really understand Bitcoin and are not likely to understand Bitcoin anytime soon. Because if you're a 65-year-old billionaire, where is the incentive to learn about Bitcoin? But they do understand gold. And so gold is going to catch a bid. And, you know, in a deflationary sense, I mean, gold is a hard asset. And so I do think gold will continue to like do well. I don't think it'll do as well as Bitcoin, but for the year, actually, gold is doing better than Bitcoin, which is kind of crazy to think. Yeah, it's weird. It's like the world is kind of finally waking up to some of the things that we've been talking about. You know, this happened probably a year ago or maybe a year and a half ago, where like suddenly all of the things that used to be our special secret esoteric knowledge on Bitcoin Twitter became mainstream media talking points, and you can now hear them on CNBC every day, or, you know, people talk about them in Congress or in the halls of the White House. And that's just a very surreal, I think, phenomenon that most Bitcoiners have not really, we still haven't like acquiesced, like we're not used to that. It's not normal for us because we're used to being these like weirdos in the corner. And now our worldview is starting to be accepted by major institutions, major governments, you know, important people, rich people. And so we're not really like shooting spitwads from the back of the class anymore. And this thing is acting like a mature asset.
Yeah. The fundamentals of Bitcoin being fuck you, no one can take it away from me money, like they don't really change, right? It's just the people that I think different people that talk about it now.
It's a good point in the sense that, like, you know, there is a very deep meta on Bitcoin of Bitcoin being this sort of alien substrate that doesn't conform to any of the rules or social norms of the current system. But as Bitcoin starts to enter the current system, the traditional system, it starts to look like it's being co-opted or it's conforming. But if you know enough about Bitcoin's underlying architecture, you realize that it cannot be co-opted. It cannot conform, right? Like, you accept it in, but you accept it in a way that's fundamentally destabilizing to the current power structure. It's kind of like when the Romans accepted Christianity, and Roman emperors started, you know, converting to Christianity. That was fundamentally like destabilizing for Rome, and then Rome fell and collapsed into essentially the Catholic Church and became like the Holy Roman Empire. And it's very similar in that same way of like, this is Bitcoin is a dissolving force, I think, for a lot of like mainstream traditional architecture, but that's not recognized or widespread by, you know, the players that we're seeing enter the space now, like the JP Morgans of the world or the BlackRocks of the world. I don't think they really get that. I think that they think that they're in control. And I think that if you've been in Bitcoin long enough, you realize that no one's in control of Bitcoin. It is this very powerful sort of, it's almost like an AI. You know, it's like this very powerful sort of narrow AI that turns the entire world into Bitcoin. I don't know if I've ever talked about this with you, but there's this Nick Bostrom who created the book Superintelligence and the idea of simulation theory. He has this thought experiment called a paperclip maximizer. A paperclip maximizer is a AI that's super powerful, but super narrow in scope. So its only goal or objective is to make paperclips, but it's so overpowered that it ends up turning the entire world into paperclips. And I have long thought that Bitcoin is essentially a paperclip maximizer that turns the entire world into Bitcoin, because like it touched you, it turned you into Bitcoin. It touched me, it turned me into Bitcoin. And I believe that it's, you know, going to do the same thing to BlackRock. I think it's going to do the same thing to JP Morgan. And then I think it's going to do the same thing to G7 governments. I think it's going to do the same thing to the American government, to the Federal Reserve, to the International Bank of Settlements. Like, that's how powerful I think Bitcoin is. I don't think anybody can come in contact with it and not be fundamentally altered or changed. And I don't think the current system understands that yet.
Yeah. So Bitcoin custody is evolving, and OnRamp is leading this change with multi-institution custody, eliminating single points of failure. Instead of relying on one institution, OnRamp secures your Bitcoin in a cold storage multi-sig vault backed by 3 independent custodians, where no single party can move your funds alone, providing an unprecedented level of security. Your assets are protected by a 100 million Lloyd's of London insurance policy, with all transactions fully auditable on-chain and only executed at your direction. This means complete transparency and control over your assets at all times. Beyond custody, OnRamp provides comprehensive Bitcoin services that include trading, lending, inheritance planning, and IRAs. You can view them as your private Bitcoin banking partner tailored to your wealth preservation goals. Whether you're new to Bitcoin or an experienced holder, OnRamp's approach helps you secure your generational wealth with unmatched security and peace of mind. You can sign up at onrampbitcoin.com and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, to receive $150 in Bitcoin after your first deposit. If you first want to learn more, you can also book a free consultation via their website to speak with one of their Bitcoin custody experts. Tell them you came through me, and they'll take extra good care of you. My American friends, I've got something for you. If you're into Bitcoin, you want to grow your stack in any way possible. What if you could do it effortlessly just by spending your fiat? The Gemini Bitcoin credit card is designed to help you do just that by giving you instant Bitcoin rewards on every purchase. Just use it like any other credit card and earn back up to 4% on transportation, 3% on dining, 2% on groceries, and 1% on everything else. There are no annual fees for this card and no exchange fees to receive your Bitcoin rewards. Sign up to get your limited edition Bitcoin Orange credit card and earn a $200 Bitcoin bonus when you spend $3,000 in the first 90 days. You can find more information and terms in the description below, or go to gemini.com/Bram to sign up today and start stacking effortlessly. That's gemini.com/Bram. That's why hodling is hard, because the fact that you know, the fact that I know, the fact that we try to tell other people about it doesn't mean that everyone else is waking up to that, right? So we are still, in that sense, the crazy person that goes against the tide, because everyone else is basically stuck in this, chaos of fiat money. And well, before we go into why hodling is so hard, I wanted to ask you about this. Like, where does this forced conformity, I would say, or something, I don't know how to say it, with Bitcoin come from? Like, when you adopt Bitcoin, you have to adhere to the rules, right? You can only gain value from Bitcoin when you follow its rules. And the whole goal of Bitcoin is that it always stays the same. It just says, I stay the same. And every 10 minutes, all these computers say, okay, it's still the same. And that creates not only more ordered information, right? A certain truth that is, the ledger is basically the engineered truth of Bitcoin, right? And from that, certain properties emanate, or values, or principles that people adhere to, because you cannot mess with this base truth, if that makes sense. And so eventually you have to just conform, or else you cannot gain value from it. And so all these people in TradFi that you just mentioned, maybe they see it as an opportunity, maybe they see it as a protection or an escape or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Once they start conforming, like we have already done, that is when more and more people are aligned and will, I'd say, manifest Bitcoin even further in the world. Does that make sense? That's kind of how I think about it. Like,
fiat, I've said this like multiple times, but fiat is sort of like a disease of the mind, where it corrupts the way you think, because it has there's no cost associated with producing it. And so it's very easy to view yourself as, if you're somebody who's at the helm of, the fiat money printer, it's very easy to start viewing yourself as sort of a master of the universe who can just, snap your fingers Thanos style and make things happen, right? Because there's no cost to produce the currency, and so you can just produce it like ad infinitum, at a whim, essentially. And Bitcoin, we know, is very costly to produce, and gold is very costly historically to produce. And most monies that were worth a shit over human history, mainly gold, have been extremely hard to produce and very hard to fake, and easy to verify, etc. And Bitcoin, has all those properties and then some. And that's like one of the things we always talk about as Bitcoiners. But, it's interesting because there's this interplay here where, like, my greed is the thing that brought me to Bitcoin, and human greed collectively is the thing that secures Bitcoin. So, you know, it's the first like computer system where the incentive is to, you know, make it stronger and more robust rather than to attack it for personal gain. And that's a very powerful incentive flip. And so when you like conform to, you know, Bitcoin's incentive structure, you're doing so because it's in perfect alignment with your own incentive structure as an individual. And so it essentially hijacks your incentive structure. And, you know, you don't conform to it because you're a slave to Bitcoin. You conform to it because, you know, you have these natural incentives to maximize value for yourself. And when you come to and it doesn't matter if you're an individual, a corporation, a conglomerate, a hedge fund, a financial institution, a nation state, you know, we all share these same financial incentives, these human incentives. And, you know, Bitcoin is like objective reality in that sense that like, if you reject Bitcoin, you're essentially eternally punished for doing so. And the same way that if you reject reality, you're essentially eternally punished for doing so. Whereas if you accept Bitcoin as, you know, base level truth, not because you're in a cult or something, but because it's just simply true, and your incentives are in deep alignment with it, then you will be rewarded for doing so. And I think that's the interesting interplay there is like, not only is our incentives sort of hijacked by the Bitcoin system, but the Bitcoin system is in perfect alignment with our incentives to make that happen. And that's why we feel as Bitcoiners that Bitcoin is inevitable. You know,
your incentive is to conform, not to be a predator. And people will try to play fiat games, and we've seen that along the way, right? But they eventually blow up because Bitcoin is just this absolute truth. You cannot, you can try to fuck around, but that will come back to you. And the incentive to just conform is way higher than the incentive to try to mess with it, basically.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, like, you know, humans are emergent properties of the systems they inhabit, right? And so sometimes you'll hear Bitcoiners talk about it, or we'll talk about it to ourselves about like, you know, my fiat self or my Bitcoin self, right? And so my fiat self is actually a different person than my Bitcoin self. Now, I have sort of the same underlying architecture, but the way that expresses itself in the world, the way the emergent behavior is different. And I have the ability to be different in a Bitcoin system or on a Bitcoin standard than I do in a fiat system or on a fiat standard. Like being on a fiat standard turns you into a political animal because you need to ensure that, you know, your group, your tribe, you know, gets closer to the money printer, you know, to the Fed window, essentially, and that you can, you know, gain benefit for yourself at the expense of others. Because when you are consistently printing currency, you're devaluing, you know, savers, and then people who have assets do well, et cetera. Like these are like things that Bitcoiners talk about quite often. But I think, you know, in a Bitcoin system, the reason why we talk about it as like truth, justice, fairness, et cetera, is that, yeah, my incentives are on full display. I'm here to get rich. That's what I'm here for. That's why I came to Bitcoin. That's why I stay in Bitcoin. I believe that Bitcoin brings more prosperity to my life and my family's life. At the same time, though, I believe Bitcoin is a moral system because I'm not here to get rich at your expense. I'm not here to bastardize your savings. I'm not here to destroy what value that you've been able to achieve for yourself. And the network sees us, you know, whether one of us is a billionaire, one of us is homeless, the network sees us the same. And that's kind of a very unique and new idea that we haven't really had the ability to express before in a system, a global system of this magnitude, especially a system that touches everything like a monetary system, which is, you know, machine enforced code, a fair rule set run by all, enforced by dumb machines, essentially. Like that's a very powerful idea. And it builds on some of these egalitarian post-Enlightenment ideals that created, you know, the Renaissance in Europe, and then, you know, the birth of America 250 years ago. And Bitcoin is now the new instantiation of those ideals, which is, it is even more egalitarian in the sense that all men are created equal truly on the Bitcoin blockchain. And this sounds very like highfalutin, like, oh, HODL's, justifying his wealth because he's got these pie in the sky ideals. But no, I believe all of this. And it was one of the things that motivated me to get into Bitcoin back when, I didn't have a lot of money in Bitcoin. And it was very uncertain if I was going to lose all my money by putting my money into the system, is because of these. Number one, the for profit for myself, like just to be transparent, obviously. And then number two, because of this, the more virtuous this system is, the more I think it will grow. So it not only does it benefit me as an individual, but I think it benefits the world I wish to inhabit, the world I want to live in, because it will make more people prosperous. The reason I tell people about Bitcoin is like, not because I want you to buy Bitcoin so that my marginal net worth goes up like 3 cents or whatever it would be if you bought Bitcoin with your, $5,000 or whatever you have to put into the system. No, that's not why I want you to do it. I want you to do it because I want to live in a Bitcoin world with a bunch of people who have, this sort of voluntary commerce with each other and this mutual respect with each other enforced by code in a way that can't be bastardized by psychopaths and bad actors within the system. And the more prosperous the world is, the more beneficial it is to my life, because one of the worst things I could possibly think is to be very rich in some sort of a, Bitcoin takes over the system kind of thing, but normal people get entirely locked out. So, that is happening, by the way. Like these institutional players, nation states, et cetera, are starting to figure out Bitcoin because they understand power, and they understand that the current system is nearing its end, and they understand that this is a new rising system, right? And so I think the reason that we still show up on podcasts and do things like this is because we want regular people to understand the changeover, the monetary changeover that's happening, and be able to protect themselves and their families, and to achieve prosperity for themselves so that we can live a better life with them. I don't give a fuck about the elites. I don't want to join the elite class. I don't like them. I'm never going to be one of them. They don't look at me like that. No matter how much money we would get, they would still always view us as disgusting outsiders who don't share their values, because their values are changing the game whenever it is convenient or benefits them. And our values are making sure that the game can't be changed. So we're completely incompatible as like a new rising elite and an old decrepit elite. We're just completely at odds with each other.
I saw this tweet. Alan B. Watts. I think you love Alan Watts as well, probably.
I saw this. Yeah, this was Charlie Lee saying that he wishes he wouldn't have even created Litecoin. He should have bought Bitcoin and just not sold it and stayed anonymous. Yeah.
Fascinating, don't you think? Like, but the point I want to emphasize is this: like, every intellectually honest person figures it out eventually. What do you think about that?
I think that Charlie Lee is right. I think that he probably did meaningfully increase his net worth with Litecoin, but he would have increased it had he just, he was very early to Bitcoin. So he would have increased it the same amount, if not more, if he had been even more convicted in Bitcoin. And he had the opportunity to do that. I think probably, he sold most of his Litecoin back in 2017. I think most of it probably went into Bitcoin because Charlie Lee is not stupid. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting that he's out here saying something like that. He's been criticized for some of the things he did with Litecoin, et cetera. And like, Litecoin basically was a grift. I mean, let's just call it for what it is. Like, it was a grift, and, it survived on the slogan, the silver to Bitcoin's gold, as if bimetallism made any sense in a digital economy. It makes no sense, but it was a good slogan. And you could argue that there was some technical merit to Litecoin because it adopted things like SegWit even before Bitcoin adopted SegWit. So it's been a live test case for certain Bitcoin technologies and things like that. But like, yeah, he's being honest. Like everybody who's been around Bitcoin for a long time thinks to themselves the same thought, which is, I should have put everything into Bitcoin when I first heard about it. I should have maxed out credit cards. I should have taken debt. I should have done everything possible. And then I should have never, ever sold any. I should have never, ever traded any. I should have never, ever, tried to go into Bitcoin treasury companies or do shitcoin trading. I should have just bought Bitcoin and held it. But, you know, there's this quote that like 99% of man's problems come from the inability to sit alone quietly in a room. And it's just, that's one of the hardest things in the world, is to sit alone quietly in a room and do nothing. The investors whose portfolios outperform everybody's are people who are dead, which means that the hardest part of investing in Bitcoin or investing in anything is just being a human being with emotions, and feeling the whipsaw of greed and fear and boredom. I'm feeling a lot of boredom recently in this most recent bull market, whatever it is, crab market, which, you know, has its own pull to destroy your wealth, which is like, hey, you're bored, buy a Porsche. You know, that'd be fun for like 2 months, right? It's like shit like that, which like I'm not gonna do, but like I think about it because I'm a messy human being who's like, yeah, I want a Porsche. That sounds cool. You know?
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, is like, there's this lie on Bitcoin Twitter that gets bandied about where people are like, oh yeah, dude, I'm in my Bitcoin Zen, dude. I just hodl. I don't even think about it, dude. Like, it's just easy for me. And I don't believe these people at all. Number one, because I know them and I talk to them. And when times are bad, they're as scared as anybody. And when times are good, they're as greedy as anybody. And so I'm just willing to just say it as it is, which is like, yeah, when times are really good, I get really greedy. And when times are really bad, I get really afraid. And, you know, I've been through every emotion you can possibly have from hodling. I've cried because of hodling. I've vomited because of hodling. You know what I mean? Like I was also just very hungover when I vomited. But, you know, I attribute it to hodling.
Getting Bitcoin is hard. Understanding Bitcoin is hard. But hodling is harder, right? Because
well, everything is really simple, but it's not easy, right? So like,
yeah.
There are these formulas. The things that matter to human beings are health, wealth, and happiness, right? And there are these formulas for how to be healthy, wealthy, and happy that are very simple, but they're not easy. So like the best example would be, if you want to be in really good shape, you want to be really healthy, then eat less and exercise more. That's about the simplest formula you can come up with. But how hard is it to walk by a plate of fucking fresh cookies that just came out of the oven and not put one in your mouth? It's impossible. My wife literally just made cookies, and I was like, no, I'm trying not. And then I was like, oh, I'm just going to eat 6 cookies, right? Because they're hot. They just came out of the oven, Bram. They're so good. I must eat them, right? So you're fighting against this activity bias, this your human biology, right? You're fighting against your own internal biology. And that biology, this is where it gets counterintuitive. That biology is very important because it keeps you alive, right? And it has kept people like you alive for millions of years. And so if you're like threat detection, this is a good example. If you're a animal or a small human on the grasslands of Africa and the grass moves in front of you, right? And you can't see behind it. Well, probably it's the wind, but 1 out of every 30 times, 10 times, whatever, it's a tiger. And that tiger is going to fucking eat you and kill you. So you'll see this with prey animals that, like, when the wind moves the grass, they spook and they fucking run, right? And we have that in our DNA. That's very hardwired into our biology, where like it's always better to do something rather than nothing. That's activity bias. Every human being on the planet feels intuitively that it's better to do something rather than nothing. And in investing, it's the opposite. It's better to do nothing rather than something. It's the same thing with the cookie example I gave, which is like, we all come from a biological state in human history where we're in caloric deficit. We are like the first, the last like couple 100 years in the Western world, we're the only humans to ever live in caloric abundance. And we're suffering all the diseases of caloric abundance because our biology is from caloric deficit. So like when we see fresh baked, sugary cookies, we think I need to eat these until I can't physically eat anymore because I don't know when I'm going to find sugary cookies like this again. This may be the only time in my lifetime I ever find sugary cookies, right? And so when So now you're walking through the airport and there's sugary cookies everywhere, and your biology is just screaming at you to gorge yourself on them, and then you have to say, no, I'm not going to do that. And it's the same with like when the price is dropping, your biology is screaming at you to sell Bitcoin, and you have to say to yourself, no, I'm not going to do that. So it's this constant, it's this constant grappling with yourself in these deep, deep primordial desires. I mean, these things go to the core of what it is to be a human being, and you have to jujitsu them, you have to judo them to do the opposite of what every cell in your body is screaming at you to do. And that is what hodling is. It's not this bullshit of I sit in a meditative pose and I just hodl, bro. No, that's not what it is. Okay. If it is that way for you, then you're a special, unique individual. And I don't believe you at all, because I know you when you say that. It's gonna be a knife fight in a phone booth. That's what hodling is, but it's you versus you. It's you versus you.
If you want to self-custody your Bitcoin stack, I recommend the Blockstream Jade Plus. I've been using this premium Bitcoin-only hardware wallet for a few months now, and I love its design and ease of use. What makes it stand out is its open source hardware and software, and Blockstream's unique genuine check, which makes sure that your device is authentic. No backdoors or compromises. You can connect with the Jade Plus however you want: Bluetooth, USB-C, or you can go fully air-gapped with its built-in camera for cable-free QR transactions. The metal case feels solid and the color screen is easy to read, and it connects with your favorite Bitcoin apps like Blockstream Green, Sparrow, and Electrum. Get your Jade Plus today at store.blockstream.com and use code BRAM to get 10% of your entire order. Let's talk about something a lot of people don't think about before it's too late. Where are you storing your Bitcoin seed words? Are they truly secure? I found my solution with Stampseed. They now offer both 12 and 24 word titanium plates, so whether you're securing a hardware wallet or a multi-sig setup, they got you covered. Your seed phrase gets permanently stamped into pure titanium that withstands fire, survives water, and lasts for generations. Unlike shallow etching methods, Stampseed's patented tools help you to deeply stamp every letter for permanent readability, protecting your financial legacy. Their new kit includes test pieces for practice and is compatible with both the 12 and the 24 word plates. Paper seed phrases are a disaster waiting to happen. Secure your Bitcoin with Stampseed for decades to come. Go to stampseed.com and use code BRAM, that's BRAM, for 15% of your order. Well, it's constantly being confronted with the question, can I still trust myself? Can I still trust my own judgment and discernment and reflection and study and all these things when, whatever people are going to tell us in 10 years, oh, you got lucky, this and that,
People always say that, right? With like, if you're in very good shape, people are like, oh my God, you have great genetics, you're lucky, your genetics just descended from on high, they were given to you by God. If you have a great marriage, oh, you just fell into a fairy tale, right? If you're very rich, oh, you just, you happen to just buy the right investment at the right time. They don't understand the work that goes into all of those things. And there is tremendous work that goes into them. Like if you're going to have a good marriage, you're going to have to, every day show up and do the right things and deal with, another person and their emotional state. And, if you're going to have a good body, you're going to have to like show up every day with some level of consistency and eat healthy and exercise, et cetera. If you're going to be rich, you're going to have to struggle with, your human desire to spend the money, to do this, to do that. Oh, I got to live while I'm alive. Another thing is like the time will pass regardless. So I have a lot of friends who I told about Bitcoin 10 years ago, and basically nobody listened to me, right? Because like, I don't even know if it was that they didn't believe me, but it was just like, they just weren't interested in thinking about themselves 10 years in the future. Because, on fMRI studies, when you ask somebody to think about themselves in the future, the same areas of the brain light up as if you're asking somebody to think about a stranger. So the way you think about yourself in the future is the way you think about a stranger today, right? Which is pretty wild to know. And so you have to think, I'm going to do something for a future version of me that's painful for a version of me right now in order to get more benefit later for a version of me that I can't even conceptualize is me, right? That's very difficult for human beings to do. Again, these are the things that like people don't really talk about, is like, you're gonna be trapped inside this mental battle with yourself, where you're thinking through your wants, desires, everything now, which are so pressing. Everything feels like it's so immediate. You have to do it right now. You have to, like, spend the money. You have to, like, eat the sugary food. You have to, like, whatever it is. All the bad things for you are like very pressing, and they're screaming at you. Every cell in your biology is screaming at you to do it, and you have to take all of that and ignore it and sacrifice and push things forward into the future. That's extremely difficult to do. Extremely difficult to do. And I mean, this is why so many people have fucked it up. It's like it's a rare story to be a Bitcoin hodler who made it 5 years, 10 years. That's rare. That's the exception to the rule. The commonality is something more like, I had a Bitcoin, I had 1,000 Bitcoin, and I don't have it anymore. And you go, well, what happened to it? I spent it on weed, or I sold it for $8,000, or I bought a condo. Like, imagine having a $130,000 condo that you paid for with 8,000 Bitcoin. That's a real guy.
I always share, like, I bought between 100 and 300, and I sold it all at 4,000, and I felt amazing, right? As a student, I was like, oh yeah, this is baller, like, this is great. Yeah. And now I have way less, like, scary way less than before. But I think that is part of it. It is part of it, because that shows you fucked up. And then you can do two things, right? You can be like, oh, this fucking Bitcoin thing, it's never going to happen. Or you can be like, okay, I fucked up, and slowly just get back in. Because the problem that you have, perpetual debasement of fiat money, that is never really going away. I'd say in 10 years after the fact, it's even more clear that this is the problem that Bitcoin is the solution for, right? But I mean, I think fumbling, gambling, getting scammed, or whatever, it's shitcoining before you Bitcoin, all that stuff. It is kind of part of it. It is kind of part of it. But then you're actually doing things, right? So I think that is better than just being. And this is one thing I wanted to show you, like, being an intellectual or being known, talking about something, and then having some random opinion about Bitcoin that shows your intellectual dishonesty. This is something I wanted to ask you, right? So we talked about, like, if you're intellectually honest, eventually you will get to the conclusion that at least Bitcoin is something that deserves your attention, isn't ever going away, should have died many times in the beginning and is still here, is now 2 trillion plus, and there's never been an asset that's been 2 trillion plus that then went away. There's no centralized owner, there's no Ponzi, whatever. Like, you have to pay attention to it, right? And so if you're intellectually honest, you get there. But sometimes I get confronted with people that I look up to or find interesting, right? That I follow on, like, other topics, people that go really deep on certain topics, right? Where I'm like, holy shit, you're like teaching me stuff. I'm surprised when I see your content, etc. And one of these people, I don't know if you saw this, but, like, do you know this guy, Predictive History? Do you know that? Like, I know this guy. He's a professor. He has amazing videos on, like, geopolitical stuff, the whole, I don't know, religion, and it is very deep and very good. And he just talks about, especially a certain, geopolitical, stage that we're in and what's happening and how to look at the world, etc. Right? So I literally love all his videos. I watch so much, and so I said here, like, he's super diligent, well structured, deep and thorough. Now this is him talking about Bitcoin. So listen, I look up to this guy. Now listen to this.
Let's play a little.
It is a construct of the American military, of the Pentagon. Okay, so go back to 2008. Bitcoin is introduced, and it's introduced on, like, this random, like, email and by a man I can't remember the name of. Okay, but, like, no one knows who this guy is. He says, oh, you know what? I create this, blockchain, and it's all open and transparent, and maybe you guys can use it. Okay. And slowly became more popular. But no one's asking the hard questions, okay? The hard questions are, who spent the resources and the time to build a blockchain? Who is financing the servers? Who has expertise in technology? Well, if you just do some basic research, you will know it's usually DARPA, okay, the research arm of the Pentagon. They're the ones who came up with GPS. They're the ones who came up with the internet. Okay, they're always coming up with this new technology. Then the question then is, okay, why would the Pentagon want to give the Bitcoin out for free? And the answer is the same reason why they give the internet out for free, because the internet is the ultimate surveillance tool. Whatever you run on the internet is complete, it's captured, it's stored, and all this data is being analyzed to create a profile on you. You are freely giving up all your privacy to the US government, to the Pentagon, and you think it's free. And that's why it was important, really important, for Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, these guys become the face of the internet, because you trust these guys, right? In the 1970s, the Pentagon says, "Listen."
Yeah, so he rambles on, but it's just
keep it going. Actually, I want to hear the rest. I want to hear the rest of the theory.
Let's go. Wait.
Hey, we've created something called the internet. It's all free. Do you guys want to go use it? Everyone would be like, screw you. You are the Pentagon. You're responsible for the Vietnam War. You're evil. I'm never going to touch this thing, okay? That's why Steve Jobs, Bill Gates were important. Without them, the internet could not have been popular as it is today. Same thing with Bitcoin, okay? Bitcoin is designed as the ultimate surveillance technology. Who's going to use Bitcoin? Drug dealers, terrorist groups. And who's financing these terrorists and drug dealers? The CIA, okay? So the Bitcoin becomes a mechanism for the CIA to finance all its illicit activities around the world, sponsoring, terrorism, sponsoring drug dealing, sponsoring all these coup d'etats around the world. Let me give you another example. Google this. So the Winklevoss twins, they had this huge dispute with Mark Zuckerberg about who founded Facebook. Okay, they were classmates at Harvard, and the Winklevoss twins, their father's a hedge fund manager. They hired Mark Zuckerberg to write the code for Facebook, what will become Facebook, and Mark Zuckerberg sold the idea and created Facebook. And the Winklevoss twins sued Mark Zuckerberg, and I think they got like $100 million settlement, which is nothing. Okay, like Facebook is worth tens of billions of dollars today. $100 million is worth not that much. Do you know what they did? They spent every single cent of that settlement on Bitcoin, and now they're billionaires. Who the hell does that? Who the hell spends every single cent on something, on an investment? Well, they would if they knew exactly what Bitcoin was, what it was designed to do, and who owns Bitcoin. Okay, so Bitcoin is the biggest scam out there. It's run by the Pentagon. You don't have to trust me. Just do some basic research, okay? All right? And ask yourself, hey, who funded this thing? Who has the expertise, the technology to fund this thing? Who is financing the hardware to run Bitcoin? Who benefits from Bitcoin? Why would they want Bitcoin around? Right? And the answer is the CIA and the Pentagon. And that's the only answer.
Okay, so by the way, who
we got bamboozled.
Who is that? Is he an American? Who is he?
I'm not sure where he is. It's I click on his profile. He's in China, but he has wait, I'll share my screen here. He has I think he's a professor somewhere.
Yeah.
Let me see. I don't know if there's an about here, what it says.
He speaks very well, though, so he must have been American at some point.
Yeah, I do think so. So, my point here of showing this was more like there's a lot of stuff that he says about geopolitics and stuff like that, where I'm like, okay, good stuff. But then you hear this, and I think like, yeah, I mean, it's like.
Well, let's get into it. I don't know that he's that wrong. So.
But it doesn't matter. Is my point. Like it doesn't really matter who created. But yeah, go ahead.
That is part of the point. Okay. So the internet is an American military technology. Okay, but it still gives freedom to the world, right? Like Bitcoin could be an American American military technology. It could be. There's a paper from 1990, I can't remember, but it's called How to Make a Mint, and it's about digital currency, and it came out of an NSA research group. And so there's long been a theory about Bitcoin's early origins, which you could call the lab leak hypothesis, which is that there was a group of cypherpunk libertarian types who were around the NSA at the time that this paper was being written, and that they released it, probably not with the express approval of the NSA because it was shelved, but they released it anyway because they felt that it needed to be out there. And then if you do think about the geopolitical importance of a technology like Bitcoin, it is a way for the CIA, or it's potentially a way for the CIA to do long-term strategic planning and to leapfrog China in a monetary reset. So the meta here is China and Russia have been stockpiling hard assets, gold. America already has a bunch of American gold and Europe's gold, although we don't know how much of it is really at Fort Knox because there hasn't been an audit or whatever. But it would make the most sense for us, for America, to strategically demonetize gold while incepting our enemies to hold and stockpile and store gold, while monetizing a new digital gold to be the fixed point in a monetary reset, free float, sort of CBDC, central currency world, right? So that could be the game theory. It's a very sophisticated game theory if it is the game theory. And we, to his point, we might be the useful idiots who are propagating that game theory, right? But where he veers off, into cuckoo land is by claiming that the Winklevoss twins put all of their money into. They didn't do that. That's not true. That's a conspiracy theory. They put 11 million, I believe, of their $60 million settlement into it, and they already had family money, so they were set to inherit a couple $100 million anyway. They made about $60 million from the Facebook settlement, and they put about 11 million of it. So it wasn't every cent. They took a flyer on Bitcoin, just like anybody else would take a flyer on Bitcoin. Nobody went to the Winklevoss twins and read them in and was like, "Hey, bro, Bitcoin, bro, it's the new internet, bro, but it's the internet of money." That didn't happen. But I don't think that his theory, I was expecting to hate what he said. I don't think he's that far off base. I think actually there is a strong potential that, Satoshi was somebody who was working for the US government or associated with the US government. It's really weird, man. I'll just be blatantly honest here. I have been around Bitcoin many years. I've talked to many people in person. Some of them work for the government. Some I assume are informants. Some I assume are intelligence operatives. When you go to a Bitcoin party or something, the thought runs through your mind quite a bit. Is this person an intelligence asset? It's very common. So I don't know if I would say that here. All right, if you're asking me
but why? Does it actually matter? So I think people need to. So we have an opportunity to tell people on one side, perhaps it is like that, but does it really matter? Can you kind of explain if it matters?
Yeah, so I don't think it matters in the sense that Bitcoin is Bitcoin. There's no backdoor in Bitcoin or anything.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
Bitcoin is Bitcoin, just like the internet is the internet. What you see is what you get. Now, is it a way for the American, state craft apparatus to leapfrog China in a monetary reset? Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll agree to that.
Maybe. And I think if I had to guess at my theory, it would be that somebody released it. I would give this a 50% weighting. I give the lone genius theory a 50% weighting, and then I give the lab leak theory a 50% weighting. So I think it's 50-50. But the 50% that is lab leak hypothesis, I think somebody released it from, an NSA skunkworks type project or a CIA skunkworks type project without approval in a way that was not okay or acceptable to the powers that be. But then once it was out there, I think they kind of tried to ignore it to see what would happen, and then I think over time they realized, wait a second, this could actually be beneficial for us. But we have to make the Chinese swallow it hook, line, and sinker. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And so we have to come out against it in order to ultimately co-opt it. You know, because at the end of the day, like, I think there's over 10 million Bitcoin in America, you know?
Mm.
And is that an accident? Is it because America's already the richest country in the world? Is it because the spooks are out to play? Is it because Michael Saylor's offices are 15 minutes from Langley? I don't know. Like, I don't know, you know? But like,
Yeah.
it is interesting to think about quite a bit. So yeah, I think homeboy there is, he's kind of right to be upset about it from a Chinese perspective, but like, that may be the game that's happening. If it is a tool for state power, then I mean, they must be laughing at us, man, because they got a bunch of anti-government people to push it forward. You know, like, good, hey, if we're getting used like pawns on the chessboard, like, it is what it is. You know, we got help.
This is what I've been saying. Imagine this comes out as CIA, NSA, crazy CBDC precursor, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
The real crazy people on the internet are saying, then I'm going to be like, good game, you know, good game. I'm gonna sit in a cave and I'm gonna think about my thinking, you know, and then thank you. Okay, you played me. Yeah. Next thing I wanted to talk about what I like to see now, and what we kind of talked about already, but we're seeing everything that we've been talking about for years actually happening, right? Like the Bitcoin thesis is playing out. And I really love this quoted post. I'll read a bit, but here, you know, this is a Luke Groman tweet, the debasement trade that we saw last week, you know, the new term of JP Morgan about gold and Bitcoin, it is the debasement trade. Well, yeah, welcome to the show, guys. You know, you're 7 years late, but here you are. Groman shows, you know, everything is up in dollars, down in Bitcoin. You know, everything is down in Bitcoin over this time. And this quoted post, what I really liked, it kind of explained, you know, what you're really seeing here is the first stage of global unit of account fracture. Like, you cannot value things in USD anymore, because that's actually a bad way to value things. Like that will show how bad the assets are that you're valuing it in. And so if you look this up, it's from this account, the profit. But what do you think about what we're just currently seeing in the beginning of this talk? We mentioned, you mentioned it's not gradually, then suddenly, it's suddenly, then gradually. Like, where do you think we are right now? Like, what are your thoughts? And you were bored. I'm bored too. Everyone is kind of like lulled to sleep, but I think a lot is happening, actually.
So I think it's very interesting to see people like Luke Groman, who I used to fight with on Twitter about not understanding Bitcoin, now be like very pro Bitcoin. And they always have to broaden it to seem smarter. It's not Bitcoin, it's the debasement trade. Like, no, it's just Bitcoin, dog. All I have in my portfolio is Bitcoin. I'm doing very well, better than people that hold Bitcoin and gold. So anyway, I think that people are starting to realize that you cannot value things in dollars anymore because it's too wonky. There's too much money printing going on. There's too much monetary inflation. There's too much debasement. It's impossible to get a handle on what's real and what's not without some hard money standard, whether that's gold or Nvidia stock or Apple stock or Bitcoin. I mean, everybody who's in finance now who's worth a shit is talking about things in relative terms rather than in objective terms. Like, people used to talk only in objective terms about the dollar, and now, like, how many dollars they were making, and now they talk in relative terms about this versus this versus this, which is a more accurate way to view the world. Regular people still haven't cottoned onto that, though. They still talk in objective terms or absolute terms about dollars because they're just, I think opportunity cost is a very difficult mental model for people to understand because they're not engaged in any sort of, long-term thinking and planning. And so the opportunity cost of what they could have or should have done doesn't occur to them because they're not doing any long-term thinking or planning in the first place. So, like, there's nothing relative to compare against, right? But for people that do think about opportunity cost, I think, yeah, it's very obvious that, you know, everything is getting cheaper in Bitcoin terms. I think Bitcoin is the most accessible. By the way, not only is Bitcoin the best way for people to store their wealth and protect themselves from this debasement, but it's the most accessible way, because there's a bunch of podcasts of people like you who are educating, and there are a bunch of accessible memes, and there's a culture, and there's a group of other individuals, and so it makes it very easy for the normal person to understand what's going on here, because it's being filtered through the language of like sort of normal talk. Like, you know, oftentimes I will ham it up and talk more like a bro, because it makes it more accessible to people rather than using $10 words every time I speak. Not to give away the whole game of American HODL, but I don't have to wear my hat backwards. All right, I can wear it, you know, this way and be like, hey guys, anyway, the debasement trade. The backwards hat is for effect, man. But yeah, I think that more and more people are starting to use Bitcoin as their unit of account because of all the reasons that we always talk about. And when you do that, your life gets easier. You know, it's suddenly much easier to invest. It's much easier to think and plan. Yeah, you got to deal with some volatility and some FUD and stuff like that. But, you know, people who have dollars, it's like the melting ice cube thing, where like, you know, their life is just getting consistently worse and they can't figure out why, you know?
I mean, this is something we've talked about in our previous podcast, right? And this is also something I want to share with you. It's funny, I just saved a lot of my own tweets just to share with you, just check my thoughts and talk. But like, literally what you just said, right? So I was thinking, sharing the understanding as to why someone needs Bitcoin is probably our greatest barrier, right? Like you said, there's so much just factually you can learn about how Bitcoin works. And then of course you have to relate it back as to why some characteristics are important, like the absolute scarcity, etc. But why does someone rather want to gamble on shitcoins or stonks? It's because their future outlook is nihilistic anyway, right? And I think that is the biggest challenge to really show. I like what Sailor says about Bitcoin is hope. It is what you just said, like your thinking changes. That's what I meant also before. It doesn't necessarily matter how much Bitcoin you have. The fact that you make a conscious decision about doing something for yourself, for the betterment of yourself, right, to lower the uncertainty towards your future, like that is probably the more freeing part than the actual amount of Bitcoin you hold.
Bitcoin is rational optimism. And, you know, it's interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day on Nostr who was, I could just tell they were stuck in this. I think a lot of Bitcoiners, this happens to them, which is you start to believe, you're like beginning to believe in the rational, optimistic outlook of the world, but you're so nihilistic that you kind of have one foot in nihilism and one foot in optimism. And then there's this tension that you can't resolve, because you've understood Bitcoin and you've understood the future and you've understood how you can be rationally optimistic and prosperous, etc. But you haven't been made rich yet by Bitcoin. You haven't been unshackled. So you're still in the fiat gulag. You're still in the fiat prison. So your everyday is nihilistic, you know? And the world around you is nihilistic, but you have this hope, like you said, it's like there's this hope, this vision for a positive future ahead of you, and that creates a tension. And I felt it myself for a long time, where I would, you know, kind of get down about it sometimes and think, Bitcoin's not going to happen. It'll never happen because they're not going to let it, or like fucking this or that, or people are stupid, they don't understand, you know, whatever. And those thoughts are extremely counterproductive and they hurt you on your journey. So the best thing you can do, this sounds crazy and stupid when you're still stuck in nihilism, but for me, who's on the other side of it, I can see that it's very obviously the right answer, and I hope you will like listen to it, which is you need to just overdose on hope and optimism. It's the only way forward, which is like, fuck the nihilism.
Yes, dude. You know? Fucking love this. We talked about this last time, and I think also, you know, for the people watching, like I think we have some decent miles in terms of hodling and thinking and doubting and all these things. And I love what you said, right? Because when you know all of this stuff, like if I knew everything I knew today, but I didn't have Bitcoin, I would be fucking depressed.
Yeah,
like seriously depressed, right? Okay, so now I have Bitcoin. I know I have this hope for the future. I know I'm protected. And I made, again, that conscious decision to do all these things. Like I have my conviction based on not, watching you 3 years ago and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to buy this magic. No, I did the work, right? And so the conviction comes from your own work. I think that's very important. But then still, and perhaps that's combined with what you mentioned before, is just like, yeah, you're still in this world that you know a lot about, and you've learned how it works, and you know about all the fucked up stuff as to why Bitcoin exists. Like, that doesn't solve tomorrow or next year or maybe even within your lifetime, right? And so why are you doing this? And I think there's a tension there that is kind of like the I go back into the matrix to eat the steak. I know it's fake, but it's nice.
Right.
Yes, exactly. It is that, right? Like, okay, I'm way too scared to follow myself. Like, that is basically what you would do then, right? To be like, I know all these things.
Once you've woken up, you are now awake. There is no going. You are
not alone. You are not alone. No,
there is
you're
no
not alone.
Jacking back into the matrix. There, I recently rewatched Lord of the Rings because my wife had never seen it, so we rewatched like the extended versions of it or whatever. And there's that moment where I think Merry says to Pippin, there won't be a Shire. Like, we have to go forward, because if we fail, there's no Shire to go back to. So like, everything we love, our whole world, it's going to fucking crumble and die if we don't have courage. Like, that's really what it comes down to. If we're not brave, if we're not courageous, and in a world of overwhelming, collapsing inward nihilism, like, where it's everything you do is cringe. Oh, it's cringe. Trying is cringe. Effort is cringe. Whatever. All that shit. Like, the best thing to do is to lean on yourself, and have the bravery and courage to be optimistic about a beautiful future. That's the journey of Bitcoin. And so I'm a filmmaker. So I went to film school. I don't know how many people know that about me, but like, in film school, we used to talk about the hero's journey a lot and Joseph Campbell's work, and like, this is the core architecture for all storytelling that we do. And the call to adventure is always the thing that precedes the adventure. And the thing that follows the call is the rejection of the call. And so if you're stuck in that nihilism, that tension between nihilism and hope, that's just you being a bitch. That's just you rejecting the call.
Yes.
You've already received the call to adventure. Like, it's time to go all the way. It's time to be as courageous as you possibly can be. Summon as much bravery as you possibly have within you, and strike out for a better world. Fuck the bullshit of all the people around you, and all the nihilism, and all of the don't try, the black pilling. It's over, man. We're never getting it back. The future is so much brighter with a tool like Bitcoin at our disposal than it would have been without, and like,
100%.
And like, the eye of Sauron is fixed upon us, and we must simply march forward to Mordor. Like, that's what the fuck we do. Okay. And like, it's not over until the fucking ring goes in the goddamn volcano.
Just try to contribute in whatever way you can. I think doing that is the inspiration, not necessarily everything you talk about or you do, but making a choice, saying like, yeah, I think this should exist in the world, and just contribute to it. Like, that is the only thing. Like, no one can read your mind, right? So you have to do stuff.
I would say also, I think that's an important point to hit on, which is like, if you're listening right now, just know that like, I'm just a dude, Bram's just a dude. Everyone you see on your screen in Bitcoin is just a dude like yourself who, fucking bought some Bitcoin and then was like, I'm going to talk about it, or I'm going to start coding, or I'm going to build an app, or I'm going to do whatever it was. Like, this is a movement of like regular unwashed people. I didn't even graduate college, you know, like there's nothing preventing anyone from, there's no barrier to entry here. You just start doing what you think is compelling or interesting and find other people along the way, and like suddenly you're doing it beyond just like buying Bitcoin and holding it. If you feel compelled to do that. If you don't, like, no big deal, you don't have to. But like if you do feel compelled to do it, just do it, man. Fucking who cares?
You can learn anything about Bitcoin. There are crazy discussions. That's the topic I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure about how deep you are into core knots and that's
stuff.
And that stuff. I don't need to go too deep. My only point I want to make here is I think it's good. I think the whole public discussion, war, strife, whatever, is a good thing. Like knots is probably not perfect. It will drive competition. I think that is good. Like, and my example here is: have you ever seen the discussion of how your bank outsources its technical architecture to some consultancy firm in India? Probably not, So this is better than any other thing you could think about. So that's
as a non-technical person myself, I always find it difficult to sift through these technical arguments in order to get to the core of what's being discussed beyond the technicals. And I haven't come to a conclusion about that with core versus knots yet. I'm still trying to think through it. But I will say that, like, in general, I'm kind of like, at least theoretically or ideologically, in favor of a plurality of implementations. And I also think core knots is potentially a false dichotomy, which is like there could be a third, implementation. I mean, like, is anybody doing LaBitcoin, right? Like there are other implementations other than core knots. So I need to dedicate some more, because it's like heating up, and I like, I'm like a personality in the space. I need to like weigh in at some point, but I really haven't, I haven't figured out for myself what the underlying fight is about from a, principle or ideological standpoint. And so that makes it hard for me to choose a side currently. And like, I know people will be like, what about this? What about that? It's like, I'm still trying to figure it out for myself. And when I do, I'll let you know.
Last time we talked about, this was around Trump inauguration and stuff. We talked a lot about, SBR, it's happening, fun. Still not really happening. I mean, he signed the what's it called?
Ceremonial SBR,
there's
we got one, but it's not a real SBR.
It's not happening. It's not really happening. Yeah, what are your thoughts on it now? It's basically my question.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like there's been no significant buying yet on the SBR. The fact that it happened ceremonially, I still think is a big deal. It didn't reflect in price, but just as a signpost for like Bitcoin's adoption, it's a pretty big deal. I mean, the US government basically said like, we are planning to hold Bitcoin for the foreseeable future. That's pretty wild. I mean, if I go back, 10 years, like that would have been just unthinkable. And the fact that it happened, it's kind of, these things happen. Like AI blew through the Turing test and nobody gave a shit. People talked about the Turing test for like fucking 50 years. AI just blew through it. Almost every mainstream AI can now pass the Turing test and nobody gives a fuck. And it's the same thing with like the SBR. Is like, we talked about the SBR for 10 years, it happened, and then it's like, who cares, whatever.
Well,
that's kind of where I'm at with that. But I do think that eventually there will be, large level buying from nation states and central banks. That's obvious. But we may not be in that cycle yet. We may be in the institutional cycle, which is what we're seeing kind of play out with JP Morgan and, BlackRock and, Fidelity and all these guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just that's maybe a fun thing, a little psychology thing. I don't know. Did you see that human skull discovery that makes the like modern human skull, like our skull, like 500,000 years older?
Yeah.
That's a real thing, and no one cares.
I did see that. Yeah, I did.
No one cares. Literally, no one cares. Like, oh, we are 500,000 years older. Yeah, okay,
well,
sure.
The fact that when I saw that, I thought to myself, Atlantis is real. That was my first thought.
Oh, hell yeah.
Atlantis
Hell
is
yeah.
real. Like basically every myth that you ever
History's
heard.
fake.
Yeah.
History's fake.
Every myth you ever heard of a great civilization from the past probably was a real civilization,
Yes.
that actually existed. Like, the Graham Hancock, like
ancient
theory, all that stuff.
100%.
Yeah, I think probably we have had and lost significantly advanced civilizations, like, I don't know, 1,000 times, like probably some insane number of times.
Well, perhaps, right? Yeah. So, I agree. Yeah,
every 700,000 years, or if we've had the same brain for 700,000 years, that means that you could have had a great empire that lasted 700 years 1,000 times. That's a lot.
That's wild. Yeah, that's wild. Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, it is staring people in the face. Bitcoin, I mean, but yeah, also stuff like this, and people are just stuck, right? They are stuck. We talked about the nihilism a lot, right? And when you think about the future, like what makes you bullish? Like, what are you looking forward to, or what are like things that you would want to see?
I'll tie these things together, which is like the idea that we are these, this product of this ancient, human history, right? Of like just human history going on for so much longer, and like we are at the end product of all of those, hundreds of thousands of humans that lived and made it and died and survived and went through war and pestilence and famine and rape and whatever in order for us to be here, is just like proof, positive that we are fucking survivors of the highest order, like genetically honed over millennia to be like the motherfuckers who can survive any shit that life throws at us or that the world throws at us. And so when I think about that gift that I've been given as, the recipient of a long genetic lineage, I think out, and I think, again, like bravery, courage, risk tolerance. Like, these are the things I owe the people that put me here in this position, going back hundreds of thousands of years. And I owe it to them to not be a bitch, like, not to put too fine a point on it, but like sitting around in your underwear playing video games is loser shit. And your ancestors don't want you to be doing that. They want you to get out there and fucking make it happen. Like, your destiny is the stars. And we're all sitting around here being like, oh, I don't know. The most amazing meme I saw recently is we've all seen the Bitcoin meme where it's the guy poking Bitcoin with a stick. And he's saying, come on, do something. And you always see that meme when it's a boring period in Bitcoin, right? I recently saw an inversion of that meme where the Bitcoin has a stick and it's poking the guy.
Oh, nice.
Saying, come on, do something. And it's like, yeah, man, if Bitcoin has made you like prosperous, and if Bitcoin has given you freedom and time and like ability to, be self-sovereign, then you have a fucking responsibility. There's a massive responsibility there to do what you are meant to do in the world, to be who you are meant to be. That there's a huge responsibility there. And I think that, yeah, that's the thing that makes me the most bullish, is that the more Bitcoin's price goes up, the more people that get involved in Bitcoin, the more human potential is unlocked via Bitcoin. Right now, we don't talk about this very often, but like all of this human potential is like stuck. It's trapped it's imprisoned by the fiat system. And as Bitcoin continues to go up in value, more people get in alignment with Bitcoin. It makes people more prosperous. They get unlocked and they go to work for Bitcoin. I mean, essentially, like me and you, like, work for Bitcoin. We like work for the betterment of the world. And that's just like an interim step in like going up the Kardashev scale and getting to type 1 and then later type 2 civilization and going to the fucking stars. Like, that's what Bitcoin is about. Like, Bitcoin gives us correct economic calculation and it unlocks our human time, right? And with those two things, you can think and plan and make investments that take you closer to Kardashev type 1 and Kardashev type 2. For people that don't know what that is, Kardashev type 1 is where human beings control and harness the power of the entire planet. And then Kardashev type 2 is where we own, control, and harness the power of the sun. And then type 3 is of the entire galaxy, right? So type 3 is like, we're not going to get there anytime soon. But we could get to Kardashev type 1 potentially in our children's lifetime. And that's a pretty powerful thing that Bitcoin enables. And then we could be at Kardashev type 2 potentially by your great-grandchildren's lifetime, you know? So like for me, that's the shit that's exciting, is like our destiny is to the stars. Our destiny is to use more energy. Our destiny is to take over everything. Like that is our fucking destiny as human beings. Like we didn't go through all this bullshit to stop here because some fucking people with some stupid like fucking political views are like, oh, you're bad or you're mean or you're this or you're like, shut the fuck up. Like our destiny is in the stars, bitch.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, I just tweet out my thoughts. So sometimes I have like these things where like, fuck, I wonder where this is, but it's, you know, the people that try to control you cannot, I kind of think like they cannot deal with the reality that's been given to them. Like you said, right? Like they cannot handle this reality, and therefore they want to exert control over other people because that gives them a certain type of structure, feeling of power, or you know, however you want to call that. And yeah, again, I think Bitcoin is a tool to help you break free from that, right? Like fiat money makes you run a rat race, and Bitcoin makes you walk your own path, basically. Like you can get off the hamster wheel and walk your own path and make a decision about what that path is, right? And yeah, I agree. I think there's nothing more exciting than that. Like that is the whole point, I would say, you falling onto this earth, into this body, to then be like, well, okay, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I need to figure this out, at least for myself. I think maybe to tie it back to the team we talked about, this is why I would say hodling is hard. All these things also exist next to what you think you understand or see. And that is kind of like this internal logical battle that you have. I don't know. That's kind of my conclusion of this. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just like maybe end on this is that lately I've been thinking a lot about how, we talked about how hodling is hard and, you know, all these sort of the deep meta of like what it is to be a hodler and to strive forward in general. And I think that focus is the key. Focus breeds sort of obsession. You know, like the things that you focus on in some sort of deep, meaningful sense are your life. You know, the relationships that you focus on are your most important relationships. The pursuits that you focus on are your most important pursuits. The things you give your time and attention to, those are the things that end up dictating and controlling quite a bit of your life, you know? And so you have to make sure that these things are worthy of your time, focus, and attention. And you have to like go all in kind of when something is important. So like, instead of having your attention split between, you know, this, that, and the other thing, like be hyper focused on something for some long period of time, something that is meaningful to you, important to you. And I think Bitcoin is a good place to start, really. Like if you feel compelled to be hyper focused on Bitcoin. I've been hyper focused on Bitcoin for 10 years now, and it's been a very rewarding journey. And it's made the hard things easier because I'm so compelled and obsessed and passionate and focused that it's almost like being able to see into the future when you achieve this insane level of focus. And that's how, like 10 years ago, it was easy to know that Bitcoin was going to work out, is because I was doing nothing but thinking about Bitcoin 24 hours a day, 365 days a year for years on end. And so about 2 years into that process, you start to like see through the matrix, and you can begin to like peek around the corner of time and see what's going to occur, because there's nobody on earth who's more focused on this than you and the few other people who share this obsession with you, you know? And if you bring enough human attention together, you can completely alter the course of human history. And so it's like, you know, Bitcoin podcaster cringe. Like, okay. But also Bitcoin podcaster focusing human attention on the most important human substrate or the most important human invention in, I don't know, the last 150, 200 years. So yeah, that is, it's actually an important thing that's happening, not to like blow smoke up Bram's ass or anything, but like, it's kind of important that we're collectively putting our attention and focus on this thing. And like, because we're doing that, it's becoming more real than even we began to, or maybe first believed it could be. But like the feeling of watching Bitcoin proliferate out into the world is kind of surreal, because when you've put so much time and focus on it, you've already seen it. You've already envisioned it before it happens. So it's this constant feeling of surreality when a nation state adopts it, when BlackRock accepts it, when it goes to $125,000, when later it goes to $1 million, 10 million. Of course, you're going to feel surreal when that happens, because you've already envisioned a world in which that happens, because you've put so much time and focus and attention on it. Like you're basically using the tools that professional athletes use when they go into a tournament or a big game. They like visualize success over and over and over and over and over again until it becomes real. There's something very interesting about that as human beings, that like the things that you think become your life. Like you literally are what you think about all day long, and so the more you think about like gaining wealth, the more you're going to gain wealth, right? The more you think about these things, the more you're going to be able to transcend them. So yeah, I would say just be very diligent about what you're giving your time and energy and focus to, and be like, guard it judiciously, guard your focus like heavily. Don't give it to things that are not worth your time, because there's a lot of things out there trying to steal your time from you.
I absolutely love that. And I think this is also what, people like Joe Dispenza or something talk about, like your body believes what you think, right? Like it becomes what you think. And so whether it's real or not doesn't really matter.
Right.
If you believe it's true, it'll be true and shown, right? And last week I heard a nice one that said like, to go to sleep, you have to pretend to be asleep. I really like that one. That's a really good one. But I don't know if you know this one. If you ever seen this one. So I want to meme this, right? Don't stop talking about Bitcoin. I want to make that a meme. But here you have Steven Pinker explain it.
What's the phrase of the book? When everyone knows
that everyone knows.
Okay. So explain what that means.
Yes. So when everyone knows that everyone knows. When I know something, you know it. I know that you know it. You know that I know it. Ad infinitum. That's called common knowledge, and it is a prerequisite to coordination for people being on the same page. Money being an example. Why do I accept a green piece of paper in exchange for something of value? Because I know other people will accept it. Why do they accept it? Because they know that still other people will accept it. What's crucial is not so much belief, and I agree with Harari that social constructions, things that exist because people think they exist, are crucial for human interaction. But the crucial thing is you can't just believe in them, because if you're the only one, then it doesn't exist. What makes it exist is you believe that everyone else believes that everyone else believes that everyone else believes something. That's what allows it to become its own reality.
When the kid says the emperor has no clothes, suddenly everybody who kind of was thinking that now, because it was said out loud?
Well, yes, and the story of the Emperor's New Clothes is a story about common knowledge, because when the kid blurted it out, he actually wasn't telling anyone anything they didn't already know. They could see the emperor was naked, but he still changed their knowledge, because by blurting it out within earshot of the others, now everyone knew that everyone else knew that everyone else knew that everyone else knew. And what that allowed them to do is change their relationship with the emperor from obsequious deference to ridicule and scorn. And the thing about common knowledge in the social realm is that it's what props up our social relationships. And so when something is blurted out, then it can change everything, changes the nature of your relationship with someone.
Totally. 100%.
So
that's why
study Bitcoin.
You should just blurt out, fucking buy Bitcoin, fucking stack sats, stay humble, keep blurting it out. Fucking, like anytime anybody tells you anything, just be like, Bitcoin fixes this, right? You know that, right?
It's so annoying. I love it. It's so funny. Yeah. All right, brother. Well, this was amazing. I hope people enjoyed. I think this was a fun rip. Let's do it again sometime. I think it's nice to have this from time to time. Feels like at least a long time for me having a conversation like this, just exploring and talking. And so I very much enjoyed it, man. So thank you.
No, totally, man. Let's do another one. Like, just let me know when.
Let's do it. All right. Thanks for everyone watching, and see you again. Cheers.
Bye, guys.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, please like this video if you want to help shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, and subscribe to my channel to stay connected. I hope to see you for a next episode. Bye.